Greetings, programs, and welcome to the Awesome Friday podcast. This is December 3rd, 2023. My name is Matthew. With me is Simon, and this week we're talking about two movies, which, as regular listeners of the show will tell you, is shocking. Which is totally shocking. How are you, Simon? How are things today?
I'm okay. I'm a little frustrated, but just with I spent a large amount of money to buy a large thing, and it doesn't fit together properly, and it's very obviously one of the panels is very obviously too big. And I'm talking to the customer services, and they're great, but they keep they're giving me stock answers which don't relate to my system, and then they're giving me like advice that doesn't relate to my problem. And I just feel like today I'm going to send a video and say, this is the thing, please help me fix it. So that's a little frustrating, but yeah, I'm sure it'll get fixed in the end.
I know the company you're dealing with is Arcade 1UP, and it's an arcade cabinet, and I can tell you from prior experience as a person who worked in a store that sold their stuff that their support is actually generally really good, and eventually they will just send you another piece. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have contacted them in the past and been like, hey, the button on this panel that a customer bought 6 months ago wore out, and they're like, here's another controller piece.
I hope so. They seem genuinely confused at what I'm trying to describe, because it would indicate that one of their manufacturing processes is broken, is wrong, because I have a piece that is clearly too big for the unit, and it was in a sealed box with the things on it. No one got to this before me, so it's going to take some describing, I think, but hopefully it's not a big issue for them.
It's interesting too, because I have assembled a number of those cabinets, and I've never run up against anything like you're describing. So I hope it's like a one-off for them, because I think their products are generally, to be fair, quite expensive, to the point where I've always had second thoughts about, and third thoughts and fourth thoughts about even buying one on clearance. But I don't think they're not worth it. It's just that I've never really had the spare cash to do so, or the impulse to buy one in such a strong way as you had this week buying that Star Wars cabinet. So
it's my white whale. I feel like my gaming has come in a full loop. I haven't been feeling, as you know, I haven't been feeling gaming in a while. I don't really get anything from it that I used to. All the games I'm playing are either truck delivery, very gentle delivery truck games, or there's this shocker I'm into the game where you have to decipher a language, which I'm really, really enjoying. But anything that needs any kind of quick reactions or challenge, I'm just bouncing off completely. So getting, as if you listen to our Patreon episode, you'll know that I fell in love with gaming playing Vector Star Wars. And I feel like I've been chasing that high with all my gaming, and this might be a nice time to draw that circle to a close and just stop spending money on games I don't play anymore. Just play Star Wars.
Just play that one game over and over and over again.
Just play this and trucks. I basically ignore 99.5% of my gaming library, constantly. And there's so few things I play now. And it would be a nice end, because I've known that I've been falling out of love with modern gaming for a while, and I don't have the time to game, and to end up with the very expensive, but to end up with the game that made me love gaming as my own in my home, that is as close as I'm ever going to get, because it's got the proper yoke and it's got all the sound effects and detailing and all that. I'm never going to have the original cab, so this is as close as I'm going to get. And maybe it's just a good time to draw that circle and do other things. I want to read more, I want to play more music, I want to do art, I want to watch more movies. I've enjoyed, as I've mentioned to you the last couple of years, watching a good movie now, or a good TV show now, feels like how it used to feel playing a good game. And I feel like that's just maybe where my love is now. And I have so little time for any of this that I just want to do the things I love. Obviously, that when I have time, I just want to do things that make me feel good. And modern gaming doesn't do that for me, because it has changed. The gaming structures, environments that we fell in love with do not exist anymore wholesale. We are not the market anymore, and it has mutated into fundamentally a live service where they will charge you $100 and something for a game, and then charge you for every piece of that game as it's released, and people will pay for it, so they
Well, and
keep doing
also
it. So
charge you $150 a year to access the service to make that game playable too.
yeah. So I don't know. I'm bouncing off it. I'm looking around at all the things I have, and I'm wondering if I even want them anymore. But hey,
It's weird to think that one of the best values in like gaming today is actually the Apple Arcade. Like, and I say that unironically. Like, that is like there's you get so much for your money,
you do
and
that. It's about to.
it
It's
like
going up in
removes.
price, unfortunately.
It just went up in price. It's interesting. This is a whole other discussion, but like, um, so Apple Arcade went up in price. So did Apple TV Plus and a few other things. And like my Apple One subscription went from like $39 to $44 or $45 a month or something like that. Which, to be fair, I think, and I'm going to say this, I actually don't. I actually think it's still a good deal. Like, um, more in particular, when the price hikes were announced, which is right after the strikes ended, and they're really trying to spin this as the actor's fault, which is total bullshit. But like, because Netflix is going up in price, Disney Plus is going up in price, and Apple TV Plus is going up in price. And I had some people I know in a critic group that I'm part of saying that like I don't think I'm gonna have Apple TV Plus anymore because I just don't think it's worth it. And my response is that like of those three, Apple TV Plus is by far the most worth it. Like they're sort of looking at it as like how much can you get for your money, and going from like $6 to $10 is, yes, it's like a fairly big percentage wise price hike. And Apple does not have like a huge back catalog of other studios stuff, right? Like Netflix, you're getting Netflix originals, but you're getting tons of other movies. And Disney, you're getting everything Disney's ever made. But Netflix is going up. If you want 4K video, Netflix is going up to like $22 a month here in Canada. Whereas Apple TV Plus is all 4K and it's $10 a month. And while it's true you don't get this other catalog of stuff, you only get Apple TV originals, but they have a super high hit rate. They have several of what I would consider to be the best shows on TV at the moment. And their hit rate for movies is similarly high. Like they seem to really give a shit about the content that they produce. Like I think the best way to describe it is that they're not trying to be Netflix, they're trying to be HBO. And not HBO Max, but HBO specifically. So I think that like this is a big circular thing to say that like yes, Apple stuff went up in price, but I think they're still by far the most worthwhile of the prices they're charging for things.
It's interesting
Because PlayStation Plus is the same thing. PlayStation Plus I think is a very good deal, and they give you two like otherwise $100 games a month, but the service is going up to like $150 a year, and I don't want to pay for it anymore. Like I don't think that's worth it.
No,
because not all those games are good. Like if every single game, if like 95% of those games were good games, I would be like, sure, whatever. I never want to have to pay for a game separately again. But you don't get enough of them, and not all of them are good. So it's not worth
it. And that's how the first year of PlayStation Plus and Xbox Game Pass did exactly that. Their first year was the most unbelievable value every month of incredible games, and then they get people in and start sort of draining away the big hits. The thing about Apple's interesting because we've got access to the press portal, which cuts out all the other UI and just lists everything on the service. And scrolling through that is kind of mind-blowing at the quality of things in that service is incredible. Like you could just watch their stuff and be happy. I'm still like even things like I don't know, was Station 11 just bought by them or did they produce it? Because
Station 11 was actually an HBO show.
Right.
HBO, I think.
So
it's not an Apple TV.
Oh, Station 11 wasn't on Apple TV?
No.
Really?
Nope.
Okay, let's okay, I got that wrong. Well, what about For All Mankind? Is that Apple produced or did they just buy it?
For All Mankind is technically it's an Apple TV Plus original. It's a co-production with Sony TV, Sony Pictures Television.
Because the quality of that I've not found anything on Netflix that would replicate that kind of quality. Like Squid Game was very, very good, but in terms of pure like viewing quality, the stuff on Apple's mind blowing. But going back to your Apple Arcade point, Apple Arcade is pretty good. A better mobile game service that loads of people sleep on because they haven't quite got the dedicated app sorted yet is the Netflix game service for iOS that's integrated into the Netflix subscription. So if you subscribe to Netflix, you already have an iOS game library that rivals any other digital game library, including Game Pass. The number of high quality games on Netflix iOS game subscription is unbelievable. The games they've got, and they've just got the license for the first three 3D GTA games. So GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, all going to be all the remastered versions included in the Netflix subscription.
I'm sorry, you're
And
telling me I can play Grand Theft Auto Vice City
yes,
on my iPad via Netflix?
this you
I knew the
go
service
go
was good, but now I need to go and I'm just
the
gonna.
service.
You just keep talking. I'm just gonna grab my
You,
iPad for no.
I'm not sure it's out yet. I think it's coming in December at some point. You've got both Oxenfrees. You've got incredible real time strategy called Breach and Clear. You've got oh god, some of my favorite games. There's a fantastic Indian Indo-Asian set adventure game on there, which I can't remember the name, but it's fantastic. There's so many great games on there. And the problem is that if you can go to your iOS Netflix video app and find the subcategory and go that way, but you can't download them from there. You can only do it from the App Store. They desperately need a standalone Gamefront app, which I'm sure is coming because they've just released an app for controllers. But if you go to the the App Store on your iPad and search for Netflix. So you bring up the Netflix app and then tap Netflix as the publisher. It brings up all of their published apps, which includes all of their games, and then just go through that list of games and hit download on as many of them as you want. Immortality is on there. Probably the best game of last year is on there, which is a game about match cutting an actress's previous movies, and within the match cuts are an extra. I can't say anything more than that. It's a visual puzzle game that is incredible. Like some of the best games of the last couple of years are on that service, but you have to go dig for it. And that's included in your Netflix subscription. The quality of the games on their games subscription service is worth the money alone, even without any of the video content. So
They've entered
I've
the
really,
breach.
yeah, I'm really interested in Netflix's strategy because it's almost like they're doing shadow drops for everything. They're really not promoting the games. So many gameplays don't know about the service, or because it's a bit of a pain to access it. You can't access it on your TV, so the iOS games only pop up on your iOS app as a subcategory. The best way to, as I said, to find them is to go digging into the App Store and then bring up the list. Oxenfree 1 is one of my all-time favorite games, and that's on there. Oxenfree 2 is on there as well. I'm sure if I brought up the list now, I could wax lyrical about so many games they've got on there.
It's not as many as I sort of expected based on the way you're talking about it, but there's a lot of quality
Yeah,
games in here. Yes.
that's exactly the thing. So there's not as many as Apple Arcade, but I've played most Apple Arcade games, and maybe 2 or 3 of them would make me want to keep playing. But on the Netflix service, you've got Dead Cells, which is coming out. And remember, you can sync either an Xbox pad or a any PlayStation pad to your iPad. Storyteller is on there, which is one of the best narrative games I've ever played, where you build elements. You build a fairy tale to have a certain conclusion based on draggable elements that change each other in real time depending on your previous elements. So it's all about like the structure of narration and how to build a narrative. It's incredible.
I love that we're just not really podcasting at the moment. I'm just looking at this list while you describe the list to me.
Yeah, it's
Um,
fantastic.
but yeah, it does
Sonic.
look pretty good. There's definitely not as much as Apple Arcade.
No,
And I
there's
think
better.
that, like, I also don't. I'm just going to say this. I think it's a very good list of games. I don't think I would subscribe to Netflix just to get it though. Whereas, like, I would definitely, if I wasn't already
Oh, yeah.
subscribed to Apple One because I'm all in on their shit, like, I would subscribe to Apple Arcade to get some of those games just to have them. Uh,
I'm the
you
other
know,
way
like,
around. I wouldn't. I've just cancelled Apple Arcade because I'm not using it. But I would like Kentucky Route Zero's on there. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em ups on there. 12 Minutes is on there. Like
I just, well, like, for contrast, like in Apple Arcade, like, I play games like Mini Metro and Grindstone, like, all the time,
oh,
like,
right,
all the
yeah.
time. Um, like, if you were like look at my, like, list of games I play frequently, like, I would be willing to bet that over, if you look at, like, the last 4 years, like, um, Grindstone would be near the top, and Mini Metro would
Grindstone's
be near the top.
Grindstone's really really good, but I hit a wall in that game like hard. I
Well,
just don't
but here's the
think.
thing that's great about it, that I'm not sure you get this even with the Netflix one, is that just in the last couple of months they added a bunch of stuff to Grindstone, like a bunch, like a whole bunch of
Hmm.
stuff. There's a whole other, like, alternate path you can take now with all new puzzles and a whole new point,
Hmm.
um, which is great. And then stuff like, there's a great Star Trek game, Galaga Wars. Like, there's just a ton of stuff. We're sort of rambling off point, but, like, yeah, it's the point is that, like, there's better ways to do this. Anyway,
Let's get into our movies.
yeah, maybe we should stop rambling and start talking about movies. So we're going to talk about two movies. Before we do, just just to get it out of the way ahead of time, just a reminder that if you do like the show, if you do like the series, if you like the rambling you've heard so far, which has been totally off topic, uh, um, we do. You can support us with either a subscription on your podcasting platform of choice, or a high review, or we do have a Patreon, and for as little as $2 a month Canadian, which I'm pretty sure is approximately 84 cents American. You can support us and get a bonus episode every week too. This week we talked about, actually, probably the reason we're talking about games now is we talked about, like, formative gaming experiences and digital libraries. So we're sort of stayed on point. But with that, we're going to get into the main show. So we're talking this week. This weekend has been the Whistler Film Festival 2023, which I think is one of the more interesting festivals that happens in the region that we live in. And it's usually, and this year's no exception, a great showcase for Canadian cinema. So naturally, we're going to talk about one big American release first, or second, but we're going to talk about one Canadian release as well that's having its world premiere at the Whistler Film Festival. And just for the record, the Whistler Film Festival is great. It has a ton of great content, ton of great films, and it is playing in person, I believe, and I think it's almost over, but it's online until I think the 17th of December. So there's lots of chances for you to go and see lots of great Canadian films via this festival, and I highly encourage you to do so. In addition to this episode, I'll have hopefully several reviews up with that shelf in the next week or so, for other stuff I've seen. But with that, let's jump in. So we're going to talk about a Canadian film first. So let's do that. I feel like I've lost my momentum for some reason. But we're going to talk about a film that's had its world premiere at Whistler Film Festival, and that film is called The Burning Season, and it is directed by Sean Garrity, who has directed things you've probably heard of if you've heard of Canadian cinema, including My Awkward Sexual Adventure. What else did he do? The
Quite
End of
basic.
Sex. The End of Sex last year with actually his recurring collaborator Jonas Chernick, who stars in this one and also co-wrote this one. This one also stars Sarah Canning, and I'm sure I'm going to say his name wrong, but Joe Pingu. Pingu.
Mm, I,
Um,
I don't know.
I am not 100% sure. And Tanisha. It's interesting that I'm less intimidated by the name Themavonska. Uh, so anyway, and this concerns. So the way the film plays out is super interesting. It tells the story of an affair between Jonas Chernick's character, who's called JB. He owns a resort and he's engaged to a woman called Poppy, played by Ms. Thambavongsa. And Sarah Canning and and Joe Pingu play this character who come to the resort every summer, and every summer Jonas Chernyk's character and Sarah Canning's character have an affair. And the film plays out in reverse. There are 7 chapters in a prologue, but it starts with chapter 7 and it ends with the prologue, which is super interesting choice. And as you go sort of back in time, and some of the time jumps are like momentary and some of them are years. But as you sort of go back in time, the nature of these relationships changes. And it is just splendidly acted, in particular by Sarah Canning, I would say. As a woman who, her past, which is tied to Jonas Chernyk's past, so her name is Elena, and she and Jonas Chernyk's character JB have this murky at the start, but obviously illuminated by the end, past together. And her ability to portray just that fine line of a woman who like seems in control but has also never been in control and is sort of always walking that edge of her own destiny, it is super interesting and super satisfying the way it pays off toward the end. Joe Pingu is similarly spectacular as the guy who doesn't really have a lot to do except show up and be supportive of Alina's character. And Jonas Chernick, I think, is reliable. Unfortunately, I think that he's probably the weak link in the acting chain. Not to say that he's bad, but he has a couple of scenes that sort of bounced off me pretty hard. But I'd rather focus on how good Sarah Canning is in the story. And I don't really want to tell you anything else about it because I want you to see it. And I feel like going in blind is probably the best way to do that. I don't know. How do you feel about it? I really liked it. How do you feel about it?
So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so successful in the way it chose to tell its story, which I joked with you that we should choose this movie because it will give me something to rant about when I go on about how the narrative doesn't work, because it's told backwards. It starts with chapter 5 and it goes back
7
through the chapters. 7, sorry.
Yep.
Is it really 7? Okay.
7 chapters in the prologue, told in reverse. It's wonderful.
And it's a big swing to do it that way. And for me, I'm always questioning like why what has it done to deserve that big swing? Like why is it using that? Is it just for effect, or is it a part of the story? And I was just blown away by this film. I thought it was so well written, in particular, brilliantly written, and by most of the cast, exquisitely acted as well. But Sarah Canning is the standout in this cast. She was just fantastic. I've never seen her in anything before. Apparently, she was in Once Upon a Time, and she's done some like romantic stuff. And I think she was in Nancy Drew. But...
So you've definitely seen her in something before because she was one of the apes in War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, really? Was she?
Yeah.
Interesting. Funny enough, I didn't recognize her.
Yeah.
But I hope this is her springboard, and I hope this movie gets her whatever the Canadian Acting Awards are called now. Canadian Screen Acting Awards.
Canadian Screen Awards, yeah.
Right. I hope there's some kind of recognition here that elevates her career and puts her in more stuff that we can watch, because she is so nuanced in this role. And the great thing about the way this is written and acted is that because you start really at the end, and they allude to her and JB's relationship, the true nature of that relationship. They kind of tease you with certain things without confirming it until an early chapter, which is of course the end of the movie. So actually very intelligently takes you through some very dark possibilities with their relationship. And the way she kind of acts within that sort of again, it's another movie that needs the person watching to actually watch, and she plays with that. She plays with these like implications, and also she's got some incredibly just great line reads and reactions to reads as well. I just couldn't take my eyes off her. I thought she was just incredible.
Yeah,
and and I really like Joe. Is it Pingy? He's in The Expanse as well. I just find him very, very watchable, and he's got a brilliant natural delivery style. And all of their characters, because the chapters don't run like scene to scene. There's time jumps between them, and the characters are really, really good at portraying different years of their characters and different parts of their relationship. I
Yeah,
thought that Tanisha, Thummer Von's, oh, sorry, sorry,
Emma
sorry,
Vonza.
sorry. Thought she
Um,
was brilliant as well. And
yeah, most of the time jumps are just 1 year because
yes.
Tom and Alina, Joe and Sarah, they come up to this resort once a year, ever at the same time of year. So most of the chapters are just that part of their relationship,
Hmm.
and there's one or two
Yeah.
that are one that's much shorter, and then one that's also like a much bigger time jump. Um,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
but you're right. It's not just the nuance in like Sarah Canning's character. She has some difficult stuff she needs to sort of portray before you understand what she's portraying, and I think she does a really great job of it. But also, you're right. Like the in between, like even just the the performance of 1 year to the next going in reverse is also super well accomplished.
Hmm.
And I sort of hate that I even pointed out that I think that Jonas Chernick wasn't the best because I think he's
Hmm.
99% good. There's really just one scene where I was like, really? That seems like maybe you should have done one more take. And there's one scene that requires him to be. It's like the first scene in the movie that requires him to be a lot bigger. He's high on cocaine and he's under a ton of stress. You don't really understand why he's under stress at that point. Um, and he probably goes a little too big with it. But I think in the rest of the movie, he's great, personally. And also, it's hard to fault him because he also wrote this. He co-wrote this, and it's
Yeah,
so
it's
well
brilliantly
written,
written. It
so
is.
well written, and it doesn't hurt.
I just,
It also doesn't hurt that like this was filmed at mostly Algonquin Park in Ontario, and holy shit, that place is gorgeous. Like, it doesn't help that they're acting against this like, and like the place they are is very much a character in the story as well, and it's a
hmm
gorgeous place to look at, and for them to just exist in the background.
and it's gorgeously shot, like in the same way that Falcon Lake was gorgeously shot. Like they don't just go to that location. The filmmaker really uses that
Yeah,
environment and lights it and shoots it beautifully. There's a similar lake. At one point, I was like, "Is this Falcon Lake? Is this the same lake?" Because it just looks as good. It looks beautiful. Maybe there's just more than one beautiful lake in Canada. Who knows?
I
But the
mean, I can personally attest to the fact that there is more than one beautiful lake in Canada. Yes.
excellent. Well, it's probably a different lake. I like Jonas Sherwick is doing the work. I just wish he my same feedback as when I watched Ashgrove. I just sometimes wish he was a bit smaller sometimes, a bit more natural. I don't believe him all the time. I actually didn't mind the beginning. It was the quieter moments at the middle and the end that I just didn't believe it because I just want him to
Oh
do
yeah,
less. Like I
totally,
want him
totally
to
the
do less.
opposite for me. The all
Yeah.
everything most of the scenes he has are one on one with Sarah Canning, at various stages in this illicit affair that they are having together, and I thought that all of those scenes were great. Like all of the
Yeah.
scenes that really matter are great. It's really just one or two for me where I was a little bit like, maybe, maybe not. Um,
I really
and I
I
hate that we're focusing on this because like it's such a minor point. I just know that we kind of disagree about it. We end up focusing on
yeah.
it. But we're
I
this
don't
just to be clear, listeners, we are picking nits. Like we are
yeah.
like this is
It,
not a deal breaker. Like he is not bad.
no, no,
It's
not at
just
all.
that like it's hard. It's hard when someone who is good is amongst other people who are
Yeah.
fucking great. You know?
Everyone. There's a couple of actors introduced towards the end that you don't see before who are just and that's a big risk as well. And they're great. And the things they all of the actors in this um, have to do some pretty personal things with other cast members, and there's a lot of trust on screen, and there's a lot of actors giving themselves completely to the vision of the director, and there's no way the actors would have found what they were doing without the support of a cast and crew, the crew around that, especially with the younger actors as well. it's a very honest picture as well, and I found the duplicity of the various cheating relationships as they go through the years both relatable and utterly devastating in how authentic they are, and it's that pit of the stomach feeling that you know that it's wrong, but it just feels right. And we've all, in our stupid days, we've all been in that situation, and I thought it's very authentic, and the needfulness from one person to another, even when they can't have the other person, I thought was portrayed brilliantly. Just blew me away. What a great film. And I really hope it does the rounds, and I really hope it gets some bigger exposure. It's not just a good Canadian film. I hope, like Brother as well, I just want the profile to be bigger.
Yeah,
Like Canada's clearly making some great movies
I think it's
for her
actually one of
language
the.
director.
I have a couple of other things I want to say just about the structure, but I think staying on this point for the moment, I think this is actually one of the other reasons why, like, even if there is a character in this, and just to be clear, in that other film you mentioned, Ashgrove, we disagreed entirely about Jonas Chernick at that moment. In that moment, I thought he was great in that film. Um,
Okay.
um, but it's also hard to fault him because he is working a lot. He works almost exclusively in Canada, and he seems to give a shit about Canadian cinema. And it's really hard to fault anyone who meets even one of those things. Someone
Mm,
who like clearly cares about making movies, about telling stories, and who wants to do it at home and does it at home. I think he's not like, I don't think he's not a household name, but like
mm,
he's one of those guys who I just like 100% appreciate exists. and and Sean Garrity, and there's a few other um, guys like that who have this sort of like industry, and they all work together. And I think I just love that they're doing it. To be totally honest,
mm,
it's hard, and especially when I think most of their output has been good. Like Sean Garrity, I think My Awkward Sexual Adventure and the End of Sex are both fun. And another one that Jonas Chernick was in a couple years ago called James versus His Future Self is a really fun movie, which
mm,
is a very timey-wimey time travel movie.
mm.
And I think that, again, they're just doing good work, and I want to see them keep doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I
Um,
want more. I want more. Absolutely.
but to switch back to the movie we're talking about, the other thing I found is that so the structure is, I think, is genius. I think the way they've decided to tell the story, I think you're correct. I think it's a really big swing, and I think it serves the narrative the way they've told it. And it's also super refreshing because a lesser film would have just done the two narratives then and now thing that we have seen roughly a bazillion times since the premiere of
Mm,
Lost. Um, like a
mm,
lesser film would have like the inciting incident playing out with younger actors in parallel to the present moment playing out. And this one, I think, a
mm,
by choosing a different structure is just refreshing, and b by better illuminating their relationship through multiple years of said relationship makes
mm,
the ending in particular just hit that much harder.
mm.
The ultimate
Yeah.
revelation hits of the nature of their connection, and why they are like why
Mm,
they're connected to one another and how they're connected to one another all hits so much harder when it's finally revealed at the end, because you have all of this context. And it's just
mm,
wonderful. It's, I think you said you hope it's up for some Canadian Screen Awards. I think Whistler is actually has a pretty decent history of Canadian films getting awards because it's it's toward the end of the film season for Canada. So
mm.
and it is a CSA qualifying festival. So lots of other things that I've seen here have gone on to win or at least be nominated for CSAs in the past, and I hope this is one of them. I hope it's nominated for a ton of awards. But you're right, Sarah Canning in particular, and
Yeah.
I hope the writers and directors also get nominated because it's great, and
Can
I
I ask?
really hope it makes the round. I hope it gets more than just a limited release here. I think I hope it really gets like a wide release, and I hope it gets something somewhere else. Like it's I want people to see this movie.
Can I ask a really stupid question?
Yes.
Does Canada present every year at the Oscars their entry for Best International Film?
Yes, but we missed the cutoff. Um,
So Canada counts as it should international film.
So the answer to this is yes, but usually it's films that are in French because it's best foreign language feature is the category, right? Um,
Oh, it's is that how it's worded? Foreign language,
yeah.
not international. Oh, well, that would.
So yeah, like usually, and I'm pretty sure there's been Canadian films. I'd have to go triple check to say for
No, they've got.
sure.
No, it used to be
Um,
used as best foreign language film before 2020, and now it's known as best international feature.
yeah. Hang on. But I think like didn't Denis Villeneuve win one of these, or he was at least nominated for one? Uh, yeah. So like Denis Arcand won in 2003 for Les Invasions Barbares, Barbarian Invasions. Sorry. I think that's the only one we've actually, as a the Royal Canadian the only one we've actually won. But Water was nominated. That was a deep meta. Denis Villeneuve was nominated for Incendie, which is an amazing movie. You should definitely watch. Um, our submission this year is a film called Rojek, but the shortlist hasn't been announced yet. So we haven't had a nomination since 2016 when Xavier Dolan was made. He didn't get nominated. He made the shortlist for It's Only the End of the World. Our last actual nomination was War Witch in 2012.
See, I would love to see this film nominated for Best International Film. It just feels completely right, and it would raise its profile. And it's a film that deserves to be seen by, especially audiences who only watch a certain kind of movie. Like it's so successful, it's so good at what it does, and it's so representative of something outside of that loop of American movies that it would be
Yeah, we
nice.
don't. Our Canadian cinema does not often get represented at the Oscars, but when it's a film like this, when it's an English language film, it's almost always just going to be in the main categories. Like I think I would have to double check this as well, but the last Canadian film I think nominated for Best Picture. I don't think The Sweet Hereafter was even nominated for Best Picture. I know it was stuff for Best Director for Adam McGoyan, but I don't think it was nominated for Best Picture. Let's just ask Google for Best Picture Oscars. Yeah, like we have lots of Canadians who have won Oscars, but not a lot of Canadian films who have won Oscars, if that makes sense. If I'm phrasing that well.
Mm. Yeah, they're all French language.
Yeah, and that's
There was one in
where
2000,
it's actually interesting
2006.
because like one of the things it's only I think, and to be fair, I have not been paying as close attention to this before the last say 5 or 6 years, but like we were definitely in a moment for a long time where French Canadian cinema was our best cinema. And that is, I don't think it's fair to say it's exactly false, but I think we have a much more diverse slate of talent today. Like there's a lot better English language stuff coming out of Canada right now than there was even 10 years ago. And I also think that, I think our best stuff today is coming out of our Indigenous storytelling, personally.
Yeah, some
Um,
great stuff.
so
It's
yeah,
interesting.
but I think
There's
this is exactly the kind of thing that like it's definitely going to be up for CSAs. I don't think it'll make a big enough splash to be Oscar nominated or even represented, to be totally honest. But it's the type of thing where you look at it and you go, yeah, like we make good films,
yeah, absolutely.
But like technically speaking, last year we had a Canadian nominee for Best Picture because Avatar was produced by a Canadian.
That is very technically speaking.
And the year before that, Dune was made by and co-funded by
Mm-hmm.
Canadian sources, and The Power of the Dog was co-produced by Canadian sources. So technically, we have nominees every year. Is all I'm trying to say.
uh, I just want exposure. I don't feel that Canadian films get the exposure they deserve on the wider stage outside of Canada. Like, there's people in the know, but I don't
Yeah.
think anyone.
So
No
I
one in
think
American cinema is talking about Brother or Polaris or the fantastic Canadian films that have come out over the last couple of years.
so. I think this is a much larger discussion that we're running over time on. But the thing to remember about the Oscars is that ultimately speaking, they are they are presented as the sort of creme de la creme of film awards, but ultimately they are a regional awards show.
Mm,
Like we don't hear as much about Canadian film as maybe we should, and that's because our neighbor to the south is so goddamn loud. Like
mm,
we are next door to the biggest movie industry in the world, and those films have tons of marketing money that Canadian film just doesn't.
mm,
And it's a shame because what you just said about Canadian film um, is also true. There's a ton of Spanish film you and I have never heard of that is great.
mm,
There's a ton of
mm.
French films that you and I have never heard of that is great.
And,
There's a
and
ton of insert country
indie
here
films.
films that you and I
Yeah.
have never heard of that is great. And like I've said this before, but like every year that I've covered the Vancouver Film Festival, I have seen a French film, either a French film in particular that I have fallen completely in love with that I am then never able to see again because it just
Mm,
never gets released here
mm,
ever. And a couple years ago, I saw a really great, like really, really, really great Spanish political thriller called The Realm that is just not available here, and like was like Michael Clayton level good. And that's I don't know if you've seen Michael Clayton, but for me, that's super high praise. That is an amazing film.
mm,
Um, and it's just not available. It just hasn't. It's been sporadically available on certain streaming services, and sometimes you get the French stuff if you are willing to pay. Like I think it's $16 a month for. There's a French language streaming service in Quebec you can technically access here in BC, and sometimes you get some of the French stuff if you're willing to pay for that. Um, but I don't actually speak enough French to make that worthwhile. So
Criterion doesn't have this as a category in their international because they've got a pretty
Criterion is
solid.
very curated, right? So they don't release everything. They just release
Mm,
things they consider to be significant. Um,
mm,
so like the big Criterion release for this month or next month maybe is they're releasing on UHD Mean Streets, which is Martin Scorsese's debut
oh,
feature,
but
right?
on their streaming service rather than physical, they've got a pretty
But
good
again, it's highly
international
curated, right?
service.
Like last month's big curated list was Pre-Code Divas, which is a great list, but they're all
Mm,
movies from the 30s.
mm,
There is actually a great list. I can't remember what the name of it is, but there's a great list on there right now. And you're right; they occasionally have stuff more like this. They have Joe. You know what's on Criterion Channel right now? Josie and the
mm.
Pussycats, as it
I haven't seen
should
that. I've
be.
never seen it.
But you're
Is
right.
that
There's
good?
not there's not often a wide selection of of
Mm,
not to say anything is insignificant, but there's not often a wide selection of not significant foreign films, right?
mm,
Like it's one of those things where like certain things make it through and 99% doesn't.
mm.
So it's frustrating, but I do think
Yes.
it's part of the reason why when I'm doing the planning for this show, I do try to like include Canadian titles because I feel like it's
Mm,
at least partly our responsibility as Canadian podcasters to talk about Canadian
mm,
film. And I don't think I do a good enough job of it, to be totally honest. I think there's definitely more we could be watching, more we could be talking about. But that's a whole other discussion. Anyway, we're
mm.
off topic, and the Burning season is great, and it's playing as part of
Yeah.
this film festival right now. And I
How
don't
many
know when it's
stars?
coming out, but for me, it is a 4-star film.
Yeah, me too. 4 stars.
And it's interesting because I'm at the time of the year where I'm starting to have to talk about like best of the year lists, and it's going to be a struggle to rejigger what was already my best of the year list to maybe fit this one in. So
Hmm.
do do with that
And
what you will.
and maybe Godzilla in a
It's
couple
true.
of
I'm
hours.
seeing Godzilla -1 right after we record this, and that might be number one with a bullet. Who knows? I'm a pretty easy lay for Godzilla, but besides the
You're
point.
you are a slut for Godzilla. It's true.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Anyway, show
Okay.
so 4 stars each for
Yep.
the Burning Season. Definitely seek it
hmm
out. Definitely see it. It is wonderful, and
hmm
let us know what you think. We're going to
Yes.
move on now, though, to a bigger release and an American release, and that is Todd Haynes' new. I think it would be fair to call it a relationship drama / super bleak black comedy, um, starring. Why don't you, Simon? Why don't you take us
Comedy.
through? Why don't you take us
um,
through May December, starring uh, Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman and
well,
Charles Melton. Melton?
as you probably guessed, yes, as you probably guessed from the title, this does center around a relationship with one much older partner, one much younger partner, and this is another one of these films where you have to watch to find out what's going on, because you learn gradually that Julianne Moore is playing a woman called Gracie, and she's in a relationship with Charles Melton's character Joe, who is significantly younger than her. And the film begins as famous actress Elizabeth Berry, sorry, played by famous actress Natalie Portman, arrives at Julianne's house because Elizabeth is an actress who is going to play Gracie in a biopic. And at the beginning, we don't know why Gracie is important. We just know that she's been on TV in some capacity. And then through Elizabeth's research, we learn that she basically is infamous for having an illicit relationship with this, at that time, underage boy, and she did jail time for it. And they ended up getting married and having children, and now they've been together 20 something years. And so it's with the biopic coming around, Elizabeth has come to do a very method approach to acting as this character, and she's basically spending as much time with Gracie as possible to learn not just her physical and verbal intonations and quirks, but also trying to get into her mindset of what she was thinking then and how she felt now. And the whole thing basically is a very bleak unfolding of all the issues that Gracie has. She's clearly traumatized from this incident that happened to her, but she considers herself somewhat to be the victim in it. Joe, played by Charles Melton from Riverdale, who does his absolute best to look unattractive in this movie, because the whole point about this kid is that he's now grown up, but he's never, because of his traumatic underage seduction, like statutory rape, he may have some issues that start to come out as well. And he's never really matured as a man. So Charles Melton does the thing where his posture is completely changed from his usual posture, and he's very boyish, but not in a cheeky, charming way. He's clearly not developed as many of his peers, because he's been in this relationship.
So the
And
word you're looking for is stunted. He is
stunted,
he is
stunted.
he is stunted to the point where his own children, who are
Yes,
in the story, his youngest 2 children, who are twins, are graduating high school, and they are more emotionally mature than he is.
yes, absolutely. And and it's interesting because it kind of positions the story that Natalie Portman's the eye of the audience going into this nest and disrupting things and bringing all these things to the front, and lots of animosity between Gracie's previous marriage and previous kids and her current kids, and all of this affects the relationship between Gracie and Joe, and also Gracie's mental ability is very apparently knife edge to just completely falling apart. But what's interesting, what I really really liked about this film, is that we start learning that Natalie Portman's character is not the innocent eye of the audience here, and that she has her own ideas. She has her own approaches, and maybe she's worse than everyone else as well. So everyone's got issues in this film, and it's super super dark, and it's brilliantly acted. And in particular, Charles Melton, I thought was standout for me, and that's pretty impressive because you got a TV actor up against Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore, arguably doing some of the best work of their careers, and still Charles Melton, it was the standout for me because
Mm-hmm.
the amount of nuance he put into this, he's really done the work with this character, and is portrays him in a beautifully authentic way and with real heart and with real. He's really good at portraying that boy like innocence and that trauma of never being like. The whole point is that girls didn't pay him attention until this woman did, and he was unable to resist her like sexually as well. And in real life, Charles Melton in Riverdale, he's gorgeous. He's this gorgeous, gorgeous man, and with an incredible body. And in this movie, he really does the work to portray a person who is gorgeous but feel like they're still a child. And he physically and with his voice, he does fantastic work in this, and it's believable as well. It's not like, oh, he's got glasses on so he feels he's ugly.
No, I mean
It's really
he goes
it's
full
really
dad bod.
believable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really believable, and the way he treats himself as well. Incredibly impressive turn by him, and huge potential for him as well. I'm not sure how I felt about the film in general. I'm not sure. Uh, like it's not designed to be a satisfying watch, and there's definitely some questions left unanswered. And I think the way it's written and acted is spectacular. But I came out of it not sure how I felt about it as a whole. Does that make sense? Like, what's your
Yeah.
take here?
So I have a question before I go into whatever ramble I'm going to. Um, in the early 90s, did the news about Mary Kay Letourneau make it to the UK?
I've never heard that name before.
So this film is based on Mary Kay Letourneau, who was a teacher in the United States in the early 90s, who very
Uh-huh.
famously slept with a grade 7 kid who was about 12 years old. And once she got out of jail, married him and stayed married to him. I think they finally divorced in 2019, if I remember correctly. And she later died. She died of cancer, I think, in 2020. But like, this
Hmm.
is not a true story, but it is heavily based on an actual thing that was like a big cultural moment in North America.
Oh wow! Yeah, I'm looking
Like,
at this now.
so, and like, I don't know how kids who are like, say, like Gen Z or whatever after that is are going to react to this. But as someone who is old enough to have remembered all of those news stories, like this movie is amazing. This movie's a masterwork. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's probably Todd Haynes' best film, definitely his best film since Carol, and definitely I think in the conversation for one of his best films, very generally speaking. You're right; it is not designed to be satisfying, especially the place in which it ends, and it's really ultimately it's hard to talk about without spoiling the intentions of each
Mm.
character. However, um, yeah, how am I going to say this? Natalie Portman is wonderful, and I think you're right. She starts out being this as the sort of like innocent lens for the audience to look through, but at about the halfway point, the focus of the film shifts onto her and reveals who she really is in a really interesting way. And you realize that she's actually been that the whole time. Like if you were to go back and watch it again, you'd be like, oh yeah, like she hasn't actually like changed her portrayal. It's just been the way the
Mm.
film focuses on her changes, and it brings new things to light, and I think that that's genius. Julianne
Mm.
Moore is doing, I think, who has done a lot of films with Todd Haynes, is doing, I think, some career best work
Mm.
um, in this film as this woman who would love to have you believe that she's the victim, but is so, I don't know what the right way to describe it is. I know there's a word for it, but it's not coming to me. But she is so toxic, but super nice about it. Like the way she manipulates all of the characters around her in at every point, whilst still being, at least for the first half, kind of sympathetic, is amazing. I think she's legitimately wonderful. I think that, like, as much as Charles Melton is the one who I think I agree is the standout, I think that Julianne Moore is the one who's going to win all the awards. If anything is going to win, if anyone's going to win awards from this movie, like big ticket awards, it's going to be Julianne Moore. Because she's wonderful, and like especially there's one scene right at the very end, where she just delivers a line to Natalie Portman that is so cold and so calculated as to be legitimately shocking, even though you can see it coming from a mile away. And similarly, like Natalie Portman, her turn in the second half in particular, once she's sort of revealed to the other characters, and in particular how she interacts with Charles Melton, is something else to behold. And there's one line in particular that she delivers to Charles Melton's character that is just devastating. Like not just to him, because it's a devastating, targeted, like, destruction of him as a person, but it's devastating to the audience because it's so well delivered that it's I wish we could talk about it in depth without spoiling it, because it's such a wonderful moment of terribleness in the film. But yeah, but Melton's the standout. He has to do so much with so little. He's not the focus of the story, as the real life the kid wasn't, for I think good reason, because his life would have been destroyed forever. But he has to do so much with so little, and he has to portray it all through a lens of, I don't really understand what I'm feeling. And he has a scene towards the end where he grapples with the fact that he was raped and taken advantage of, and he's grappling with it for what is presented as being probably the first time. And it is one of the best acted scenes of the year, I would say, with him and Julianne Moore. It is, again, I want to say it's a wonderful film, but it's a difficult film. It's a difficult film to watch, but it is a rewarding film to watch, if only for the performances. And much like The Burning Season, even though it's all very heightened, like, one of my favorite things about this film is that when you're watching it, a lot of the cinematography and especially the score is both wonderful and maybe the funniest thing in the movie, because it all evokes all of the technical aspects of this film evoke like a 90s made for TV
totally
schlocky B movie. Like, the acting isn't this. Like, the acting is occasionally this as well, where you're like, oh yeah, I saw this at like 2 a.m. in 1996 on cable TV. The acting is occasionally that as well, including one of Julianne Moore's first scenes, where, like, the reason I say that this movie's not a comedy, but it is bleakly and darkly comedic, just in the way the music interacts with the story, and also some of the line reads are just ridiculous, like purposefully ridiculous. There's a scene at the beginning where they're planning for a party, and Julianne Moore opens a fridge and says, "I don't think we have enough hot dogs," and it is one of the funniest things I've seen all year. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It is so inappropriately, and it's only funny because it's so inappropriate in the moment.
It's such a clever filmmaking narrative technique as well, to have that what the fuck moment with that huge orchestral, like, swell of minor keys to leading to her saying we don't have enough hot dogs. As an audience, it completely subverts your expectations from the beginning and makes you question what the fuck is going on. Like, why did that just happen? And it underlines what's coming, where with her character, everything is of equal urgency and importance. And the moments where little things happen and she has a full, like, panic attack breakdown are absolutely, like, non-acted, authentic, like, panic attack. To the point of I don't know. She's incredible in this, and she doesn't
Yeah,
overplay it, which I think is so vital. And it's so well filmed. It really is so
yeah.
clever.
But again, like at the same time, so yeah, like all of this just speaks to the fact that her character is a complete control freak. Um, but just staying on the filmmaking for a second, like it's amazing how often you watch this film and and you think to yourself, "Wow, like the cinematography is second to none." I have not
Hmm.
seen a film that is this well shot, maybe all
Hmm.
year. And then other times you
Hmm.
think to yourself, "Am I watching an episode of the Red Shoe Diaries?"
Oh man, Red
Like
Shoe Diaries.
because like there are definitely scenes with this, like again, this, like I don't know how any other way to describe it, but the score is the 90s-est TV score I've ever heard in a film. And a lot of the cinematography at points looks like the kind of shitty videotaped footage you would get in a
Mm,
90s made for TV movie. And
mhm.
the whole thing is it should like it's so discordant that it shouldn't work.
Yeah.
But I think,
But,
it's interesting to me that it worked so well for you because it was such a big story in the '90s that it actually
mm,
kind of enhanced it for me.
right.
But without, I
We
don't know
had
how it would.
similar
Like it's
experiences.
interesting to me that it works so well for you because without that context, I'm not sure that it hangs together very well.
Oh,
So
interesting. And we had very similar things in the UK. Yeah, we had a big one as well. I can't remember her name. I mean, there's so much to unpack in this film. That's what I really enjoyed about it as well. Is that even when it finished, there's so many layers that you can interpret this film on, like the superficiality of the daytime TV drama that's being concocted in amongst this real life drama, but also as someone who spent a long time in acting training and with actors, I thought it was on a very strong level a complete takedown of the method approach to playing actors, like and how presumptuous and uh, actors are who go into a situation into trauma just to absorb the research for their characters, and who have really no moral standing on anything that's happening around them.
oh yeah,
They just want to take everything they can from the moment.
yeah, like
And
Natalie Portman's character definitely subscribes to the Jared Leto version of method
yes,
acting.
this is absolutely that, and I
Like if
thought
you
it was
told
a
me
very successful
if you
takedown
if
of that.
Yeah, if you told me that her character in this film, in a previous film, was playing a villain and sent dead rats to her coworkers, I would not be surprised. And you're right; it's a very successful. Like, wow, she's a beloved actress, and the first half makes you believe that, and the second act shows you how she achieves it, and it's awful.
Yeah, totally.
I
And
think
it's the
maybe if there's a fault there, if there's a fault there at all, it might be just that it doesn't really do a good job of telling you that it doesn't have to be that way. But that's also maybe beyond the scope of the film. So
I think it effectively uses it as a way to show us that Natalie Portman's a terrible person, and I
yeah,
think
but
that that's
I guess what I'm saying though is that like I think it does a very good job of showing you that this particular character is a terrible person. But if we're going to frame it as a takedown of this style of like acting and performance, then it doesn't show any alternatives, and therefore is maybe not as successful as it could be at that.
no, I don't agree. I don't think it needs to. I think the context is there for you. It's a film that again needs intelligent. It assumes intelligence in the audience, in that it to watch and to pick up on the cues. And I think enough. Like it's so it is slightly stereotypical, but there are so many actors who do approach roles in exactly the same way, who do have the same complete lack of moral standing when it comes to the amounts of research they will pull from people's trauma in order to act better. And it turns out it's a really shitty daytime TV drama, which is like the cherry on the cake. It's like all that work for that.
Mm-hmm.
It was it, that was funny to me, like the extent it did that. And I just loved Natalie Portman. I loved her performance in this, and she's so subtly different in this to really anything else I've seen her in. And she's really got a range that we keep forgetting how good Natalie Portman is. um
I never
and
forget that. I've never forgot. She
and
is
do you know what,
so not
there's
true
one
story.
moment.
Natalie Portman is almost exactly the same age as me and has been one of my longest standing like
Oh,
crushes in the world.
absolutely. There's a moment in this film where she does a monologue straight to camera based on a love letter that was found, and so she's using Gracie's own words, and she shifts into this vulnerability, this victim vulnerability, hugely emotional. And you can see the little girl in Leon at the end of Leon. One of my all-time favorite film moments is the end of Leon, where she is trying to justify certain things to Danny. Who's the handler? Danny
Aiello.
Aiello, and she falls apart on camera, and that vulnerability is still there. You can still see that little girl, and she just turns it on, and she turns it off, and it's just incredible to watch.
I mean, that scene in particular is incredible to watch. Like
Yeah.
she is so good. I feel like part of the reason I like this too is, and maybe the last film we talked about, is they could also very easily have been like stage plays, like the way they are
Mm-hmm.
staged and shot and performed. And I
Mm-hmm.
always respond really well to that. Um, and I think like if you were to consider the characters she plays in Closer, especially toward the end,
Mm-hmm.
would be maybe a comparison to this. Although
Mm-hmm.
with there's a much more nuanced discussion there because I don't think the character in Closer is as morally bankrupt as the character in this
Mm-hmm.
film.
Yeah. No way.
um,
Absolutely.
uh, but like that change and that assertiveness and that ability to just turn on and off the things she needs to turn on and off are there in a way
Mm-hmm.
that I think are satisfying. Yes.
I know we need to wrap this up because we're going on. Sounds like we both love this film, but there's one filmmaking technique that I thought was fantastic, which goes back to the approach of the interactions, almost like a play. Is that for many two-person interactions, the camera basically sat and did nothing over one person's shoulder, so you saw only one side of the conversation. And many other films and directors would do a standard shot, reverse shot, where you cut back and forth, you see a little reaction, you see the delivery, and so on. And it was just so satisfying, especially when you start unpacking Natalie Portman's character and you start really seeing her reactions to what's being said to her. But it was also done for Julianne Moore's focus as well in other times. And to have that kind of confidence in filmmaking where you just place the camera in front of your actor and you let them do the work and you just
Mm-hmm.
feed off all of their reactions because it makes the story better was incredible, I thought.
Yeah, there's a number of scenes in this where people are standing in front of mirrors and the camera's the mirror, so they're looking right at you, right at the camera, and all of those
Mhm,
scenes are great. All of them are
mhm.
well performed, and yeah, it turns out that Todd Haynes is a good director. He's a
Have I
good director of actors for sure.
have I seen anything he's directed before? Not
You
sure I
must
have.
have, you must have.
I haven't seen
Uh,
Velvet Gold, and I haven't seen. Oh, he did the Kate, the Bob Dylan thing with different people playing Bob Dylan.
yeah, I'm not there. Carol was probably his most lauded
Haven't seen
film.
that.
Uh,
Haven't seen that.
Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo is good. Wonderstruck is a very I didn't really resonate with it in the same way that I resonated with some of his other films, but it's a wonderful sweet movie.
Oh,
Um,
he's worked with Julianne Moore a lot. That's cool.
yeah, and Velvet Goldmine, not Velvet Goldmine. I mean, Velvet Goldmine is a very singular piece of work. I would say you're either going to vibe with it or you're not. But
Hmm.
Far From Heaven is, I think, another one in which he directed um, Julianne Moore to some career best work. I think she won awards. I don't think she won an Oscar for it, but I think she won like the Venice, it's the Volpe Cup. Let me just look at it. Like she won the Volpe Cup or the whatever the Paris the Cannes one is.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it won a ton of indie spirits, and it was nominated for a bunch of Oscars and a number of Golden Globes, but didn't win any. But it won. Julianne Moore, Dennis Quaid both won Independent Spirit Awards. Julianne Moore won a Critics' Choice, L.A. Critics, National Society of Film Critics. Um, where
Oh,
else? Like it won a ton. Like it's a great film, And it's
Um,
another one that like it doesn't really seem at first blush to be what it is actually about. Like it's a very
mhm.
layered film as well.
I haven't seen any of his other films. Is the cinematography in May December typical of how he usually shoots his films?
Um, I would say yes, although I don't know. Let's just see here. Who is the cinematographer here? Christopher Blovelt, and I'm gonna say yes. I think he's very considered in the way he does this, but I think he works with different cinematographers. I don't think he has like one guy. You know, he's not like the Janusz Kaminski to Todd Haynes,
Mm-hmm.
Spielberg, right? So yeah, I think Edward Lockman did a couple with him. Yeah, I think this might actually be only the first or second time he's worked with this particular cinematographer. But that's not to say. Oh, he does actually. He's worked with Edward Lockman a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It actually looks like he's worked with Edward Lockman on almost every film to date, except for this one in Velvet Goldmine. So do with that
Mm-hmm.
with what you will. But I would still say that like he definitely has a distinct voice, and he definitely is very careful about how things are shot. For sure, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll
So
have to catch up with this.
how many
Do you know,
stars for you?
I I went in today thinking three, but with the more we've talked about it and listening to myself talk about it, I think it's probably four. Where
Yeah,
are you landing with this?
no, it's definitely a 4-star movie.
Yeah.
Like it's it can be difficult to watch, but it is one of the best acted things of the year. Like it's definitely gonna be worth watching. To be like, you should watch this film. And Charles Melton has already won a Gotham Award, which is a small, like an independent cinema award for his portrayal here. And you
Oh,
should
good.
watch this film because it's going to be the thing where you're like, oh, like I never watched Riverdale, so this is now the thing where I'm like, oh, this kid's going places. This
Yeah,
guy's going to do the work. This guy has everything ahead of him now, and I
yeah,
can't
he's
wait to see
brilliant.
more of it. And again, that's saying like you said before, that's saying a lot when Natalie Portman and Julianne fucking Moore are doing some of the best work of their careers.
Mm-hmm.
it's it's amazing how well and how much. It's another one where there's a ton of trust on screen from the entire filmmaking, from the entire production, and I it's yeah. I think this is pretty much must see TV or must see film for 2023 at this point.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Good. We
That
should we
being
wrap it
said,
up?
I don't know. We're at the end of the year. I don't know that this would exactly make my best of the year list, but
Mm,
it's
mhm.
definitely up there.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's two movies. The Burning Season currently playing at Whistler Film Festival um, through December 17th. I believe is the festival. So hopefully it's in their online selections. But if it's not, keep an eye out for it because it is great. And May
Mhm.
December is actually on Netflix now. It played as part of the Whistler Film Festival as well. If you want to see it in a theater, in a cinema, you can do so in Whistler
Oh yeah,
through
see that.
tomorrow, I believe. And
Mhm.
but otherwise, it is on Netflix now, and you can
Mm.
watch it if you have Netflix. But that's going to be the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. One last time, if you like what you hear, if you like the show, if you like our commentary, if you like the timbre of our voices, you can support us either with a subscription on your podcasting platform of choice, or a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice, or we have a Patreon at patreon.com/MC Simpson, and the the entry level version of that is only $2 Canadian a month, which is approximately 68 cents American a month, or about 25, whatever the cents version of a euro is. That's what it is.
uh, Eurocoin. I don't know.
I don't know. You should know. Your country famously didn't go on to the
What?
euro.
So why would I know if we didn't use the euro?
Well, they're next door. You know, you should know what your neighbors are up to. Um,
Cents.
but it's approximately 18p. So there for the British people in the audience.
Bargain.
um, and you get to support us, and you also get a bonus episode. Again, this week we talked about digital libraries and gaming experiences and all kinds of good stuff. If you want to get an idea what that's like, you can listen to last week's bonus episode. which was made free for everyone to listen to. So go ahead and do that. If you'd like to follow up with us, we'd love to hear what you thought about all of the stuff we've talked about today, and you can do so by following us on the socials. We are at AwesomeFridayCA on basically all the platforms. I am at SmatthewAF on all the platforms, and Simon is not on the platforms anymore, so there's that. But you can find us at our homepages. Simon is temporarypen.com. Mine is stretched.ca. And do check out the homepage for this episode, which will be in the show notes at awesomefriday.ca, where you'll be able to find our ratings in number of stars and also links you can follow to stream these films or buy or rent them. And if you use those links, those are things that also help us keep the lights on. They are powered by Just Watch, and they will update as availability changes. So you can always go to the page and find where you can watch these things.
Sorry, if you're hearing Matt's voice change, he's being aggressively attacked by his cat. Like, this is the most aggressive love I've ever seen in my life. It's wonderful. It's like pushing everything everywhere.
She definitely has me wrapped around her little finger. It would be, if we had a video show, she would be the star. But that's it. That's our show. Last but not least, we are here in Vancouver on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. Thank you one last time for listening and all your support, and thank you for joining us on this awesome Friday.
Thanks, bye.